Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Chandra Sanders, the founder and CEO of Heels and Hustle, a platform that is dedicated to helping ambitious leaders and builders convert their experience into ownership in this evolving economy. This series is called She Who Dares Building in the Evolving Economy. Because right now, we're witnessing a major shift in how people build their careers and their companies. More and more leaders are stepping outside of traditional structures and choosing to build something of their own. But starting something is only part of the story. The real question is, what does it take to sustain something? Right? So to keep building when the excitement fades, to keep leading when the path is uncertain, and to stay the course long enough for something meaningful to take shape. Last week, we talked about rewriting systems. And so today, we're going to explore something that is just as important: staying power. So today's conversation is called Staying Power because daring is not only about starting something new. Sometimes daring means building long enough to see what actually endures. It means developing the discipline, the clarity, and the conviction required to build something that lasts. So today, I am honored. Let me bring her on here really quick. All right. So, hello, Amanda. How are you?
I'm so good. It's so lovely to see you today.
It's so great to see you too. So, I was just about to introduce you, right? But before I do that, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but I want to give you a very warm welcome. All right.
Thank
So,
you.
I'm honored to be joined here today with by Amanda Breckenridge. All right. Amanda
Mhm.
is an amazing and exceptional leadership advisor who has spent years helping founders and executives navigate the realities of leadership, of growth, and of organizational change. And this year, she is celebrating 7 years of building her own advisory practice,
Mm.
7 years of helping leaders grow, 7 years of building something meaningful. And that kind of longevity tells us something very important. All right. Building something requires more than vision, it requires staying power. Right. And
Mhm.
so, Amanda, I'm really glad you're here. And before we dive deeper into this conversation, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your work and the leaders you're supporting right now.
I love it. Well, thank you for that beautiful intro. So, I'm Amanda Breckenridge. I'm an executive coach. I primarily work with CEOs and senior executives at really all stages of company growth. And I came by this work for the first 15 years of my career being a startup operator. So, I now feel deeply grateful for the work that I get to do. I feel like it's deeply aligned with my purpose and who I am, and I just love it every day.
I love that so much. I love how you said purpose. Like, I'm all about that. And so I try to bring on leaders who are, really tuned into the purpose because I believe, especially in, this evolving economy, which is what I keep
Mhm.
saying, and evolving society, like purpose is extremely important in all that we do. So,
Yes.
let's start with, the first question, all right, the moment of daring. So you spent
Mm.
years operating inside organizations before launching your own advisory practice. What
Mhm.
was the moment when you realized that you didn't just want to contribute to organizations anymore? You wanted to
Mm.
build something of your own.
Yeah. So I mentioned I was an operator for 15 years and I did really, really well in my career. I was always on the go to market side. I was quite successful from external and internal standards. But I think I always knew that I was meeting these goals and these expectations, but there was a bit of a misalignment with who I am and what I wanted to do. And I was, I led a couple of different companies. The last role was over at LinkedIn, and I had my baby who's now 8. And after giving birth to him, I got really sick and I had a freak infection that led to septic shock. And it was a really significant turning point in my life because I almost didn't make it. I almost wasn't here. And it was one of those moments that really forced me to reevaluate of you almost lose your life and you're left with like, okay, what do I do? What does this mean? What's my purpose? Why am I here? When you start to recognize how fragile each moment is. And that's what really gave me the courage to make this leap that I kind of had always wanted to do, but was really good at putting it off. And that was about 7 years ago now.
Thank you for sharing that. It's such a life-changing experience, but I feel like we all go through those life-changing experience to really, number one, figure out our purpose, what we're supposed to do, but
Yes.
really set us up, on our course to our destiny, right? Like I love that so much.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question then is, now we're at the 7-year mark. 7 years is a super powerful milestone, right? Seven is my lucky number. All right. Everything I do is around the number seven. So another reason why I was happy to have you on the show today. So, what have the last 7 years taught
Mm.
you about what it actually takes to sustain a business over
Yeah.
time? Because, it's always
It's not
woo
easy.
and fun to start something. Exactly. It is not easy building
Yeah.
and sustaining. So, what has the last 7 years taught you about
Mm.
what it takes to sustain?
Well, I almost think I'll go back to when it started. So when I was leaving, my existing career, I really, to be honest, wasn't certain what how this company would manifest itself. But what I was really clear on was that I wanted to redefine what success meant to me. For so long, it had meant bigger titles, bigger promotions, bigger money. And at some point, I was like, this isn't worth it. And I came up with a framework for the values that really define, that I believe really wanted to define kind of this next chapter of my life. And I'll go through them quickly, but my little acronym is GIFTS, and they stand for, the first is G, that stands for growth. For me, I wanted to invest deeply in areas that lit me up and where I can constantly be learning in areas that I'm passionate about. It's a huge part of what motivates and fuels me. The I stands for impact. I knew that I'm not someone who wants the big stage, the big limelight. I'll leave that to my lovely husband. But I'm someone that really thrives one on one. And how could I do really deep, transformative work? The F is flexibility of both my time and my treasure. My little guy is now 8. I've got a 20-year-old stepdaughter. But at the time, he was 2. And for me, I wanted, it sounds silly, but I was like, I want to go be able to walk in the morning. I want to be able to show up for whatever I want to show up for as it relates to him. I want to show up for myself, for my family, and so on. So that flexibility was key, which wasn't really possible in the corporate life I was leading. And T is my team, my family, my community. They are more important than what my next promotion would be. And the final one is S, is simplicity. And I share all of that because I think it's really important for me when I first started this thing to have these values clearly named, allowed me to use them as a filtering decision of where I want to go and what I want to do. Because the truth is we never know what the full path is. We don't know what start is and what the finish line is. All I knew was like I wanted to create something fundamentally different. And these values made it a very clear way for me to ensure that I was operating in line with what I wanted and what I created. And with that, it has really allowed my practice to evolve in ways that have been deeply transformative, really impactful from both an human impact, but also revenue growth, all of those pieces. But it's also that those core values have allowed me to do it in a way that stays aligned with who I am and what I wanted to create. And I think for myself, that has become a really big guidepost. And I recommend for others as they think about both launching and sustaining their own business to get really clear on what they're trying to create and then answering questions and figuring out where to go, because then start to become a bit easier with
I
that
love that.
framework.
I love that so much. So your secret to your sustainability, to your company's sustainability is really anchored and rooted in your values and your gifts. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing. So I know probably when you started out, you had other people who started out with you who may not still be in that same space at this
Yeah.
moment. So what do you think people misunderstood about the reality or
Mm.
misunderstand about the reality of building something that lasts?
It's a great question. I feel very clear that I feel fortunate that I worked in sales for so long, right? So I've always built companies on the go to market side. And I think all too often people make this leap and they want to go live their purpose or do something that is more lean into their specific and unique strengths. But I am my product. And that means I have to put myself out there. That means I have to ask for the business. That means I have to invest in myself and sell myself every single day. And I think that's one of the core pieces that people often forget about as they make this pivot away from wherever they are to building their own business is you've got to get really comfortable with um, asking for the business and being comfortable with putting yourself out there, being comfortable with rejection. And I think all too often people forget that key part, and it's a key piece. So when I see people going back, it's often because they may have the skill sets to show up and deliver, but you've got to create the business around the product that you are delivering. And I think that's often misunderstood as to how complex or how challenging that can be for some.
I love that so much. You are your product, which means you are the entire C-suite.
Yeah, that's it. It's just
You're the
me.
entire C-suite.
For better or worse, right?
Yes, yes. And so that can definitely lead to burnout. But like you said, the reason you were able to sustain is really being, again, anchored in those values, anchored in your
Yeah.
gifts, which allowed you to keep going. Even though you had to play all the different roles, it allowed you to keep going because honestly, you were anchored in something deeper, right? So
Yeah.
my next question too. All right. So I want to talk about like the discipline behind the longevity,
Mm.
right? Of course, we talked about, being the entire C-suite. So that takes a lot of discipline, right? So right now there is a lot of conversation going on about speed and growth, especially when it comes to like go to market, right? So, but staying power requires a different type of discipline. So what habits or principles have you
Mm.
helped you maintain your momentum year after year?
Mm. It's a great question. And I think honestly, this answer is going to be different for every single person. But for me personally, what's really worked is the first is simplicity. I think I've seen a lot of folks go out on their own and they want to do a million different things to map to a million different needs and a million different types of customers. For me, I wanted to do one thing and I wanted to do one thing exceptionally well, and that is one on one coaching. And I exclusively did that for the first 5 years of my building my business. And some people probably thought I was crazy, turning down opportunities to lead offsites, facilitate sessions, or whatever it might be. But what that allowed me to do was to really become both very confident in myself, but also really become an expert in my craft, so that I can continue to scale in my business. And what that also fueled was in every year I would do big training programs, and not training programs that I thought I should do, but like, again, what had heart and meaning? What lit me up? What was I drawn to? And of course, how did that map to the clients that I was serving? But it was both that deep investment in myself plus the simplicity that I think really allowed this whole thing to work. And it wasn't until the 5 years mark where I was like, okay, I've gotten this done. I'm really good at this now. Let me then start to explore group coaching, which is then what I started to do over the last 2 years for exec teams. So for me, that's what's worked really well. I just think so. I think if I can extrapolate the pattern of the recommendation, it's get really clear around what your offering is, get clear on who you want to serve, and then how can you really remain focused on it to be excellent and really build your brand in that area before spreading and scaling and taking on too much other work that um, might water down your offering and what you can actually be known for and for being excellent with when so much of business is referral based.
Yeah, that is so important. I think that a lot of challenges could be solved if people leaned into the simplicity, right? Get one thing, become the master of that one thing first before
Mm-hmm.
adding too many more services or too many more offerings
Yeah.
or whatever. I think that's very important and definitely a key to the longevity, especially now when
And it's
everyone just wants
scary
everything.
though too,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because we have to financially support ourselves, and
yes.
it's really hard to see
Hmm.
something and say, I'm going to say no to that, even though it
Hmm.
might grow my revenue. So of course you have to balance that out with the truth of the financial scenario and the situation that you're in. But I do think the more you can focus, the better you will be, and that can be both as a solo practitioner and a business owner, as even a startup CEO that is
Hmm.
consistent. Focus
Hmm.
is everything. What are your priorities and how do
Hmm.
you say no to everything else?
Hmm. And I'm going to tie it back to anchoring it into your values
That's right.
and your gifts, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love that so much. It, like, literally where you started is what continues to help
It's a
sustain
flow.
you through the years. Exactly. I love that so much. Such good information. I'm so glad you're here. I love this so much.
Thank you.
All right. So, my next question, all right, your work centers around helping leaders grow and evolve.
Mhm.
So, from your perspective, what is the biggest shift leaders have to make as their organizations grow? What's the biggest
Mm,
shift they have to make as they grow? Like as they scale, things might be going more like, more rapid than they expected.
yeah.
What's the biggest shift leaders have to make?
Oof. It's a big question because there's so many moments when you think about a company growing and scaling. Every different stage of company requires something fundamentally different from you, and every different role and scope also requires something from you. So I think what I would say for leaders is it's really starting to recognize that growth is going to be constant, and the more you are uncomfortable, the more you know you're on track, because that means you're growing, you're shifting, you're changing. I think one of the really important pieces that I would keep in mind, in particular in this chapter of AI, where we all feel it. There's this fundamental new, I almost call it like the weather pattern that's around us, where it is fundamentally shifting everything underneath us. And there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty that's caused because of that. And I don't know if this is exactly the question you asked, but I'll offer anyways. But I think so much of our work as leaders and even business owners and operators is to really understand how is the stress and how is the pressure affecting us as humans. And if we're not conscious of what the reactions are, those reactions are running us. So I think that's the big piece I'd say as leaders think about growing is how do you really start to become intimately aware of where you go under pressure and where you go under stress, and be increasing that awareness then gives you space to say, is this behavior serving me? Or is there a cost to this? And do I want to then choose something different? And I think that it's that awareness that is the most important piece that helps us think through how do we want to develop and how do we want to grow to continue to meet this moment and future.
So as you're talking about the awareness that these leaders are becoming,
Yeah,
the awareness
hopefully.
that they're gaining, right? So are there any other changes that you notice from leaders from like
Mm,
you first start working with them, and then maybe the
of
stakes increase?
course.
Like what changes do you see inside the leader?
Oh, I mean, so much. I think, again, the work that I do, we work on three different levels, if I can just name it. The first of which is strategic clarity, is how do I help leaders? Everyone feels this. The more they move up in their career, the more alone they are. So
Mm.
uh, it's really challenging as a very senior leader because you often don't have someone around you in which to workshop and dissect the biggest, hairiest problems. So that's step one. It's like, how do we partner together to get strategic clarity of where they're going and why? Then second piece is then how do we then develop the leadership capabilities to map to that moment? And every stage requires something fundamentally different, right? That can be communications, it's how to have direct conversations, how to remain focused on priorities, all these basic skills, but none of those are important if you don't know where you're going and why. And then the third and final piece, which I love to work on, is then great, we've got strategic clarity, great, we're developing skills. But then the third piece and most important is what's the inner work required to help you show up in a way that can meet the moment. And that means we have to examine how we've been shaped by our past. We have to examine our behaviors, our patterns, our ways of showing up that may be helping us or hindering us. And I think it's hard to say here's one thing of where you grow, but I think it's all of those things together that then become the clear map to a lot of growth, and eventually leading in a way that not only maps to what the company needs, but leading in a way that maps to your own values and your own truth. And when that is aligned, that's when I think leaders are really able to excel both for themselves, their teams, and their companies.
I love that so much. And you kind of answer like my next question. So I'm just gonna like follow up with a little bit more, right? So you talked
Please.
about, leaders leading in this uncertain time, right? And then also like, doing the inner work. So
Mhm.
how do leaders maintain that conviction and clarity when the environment around them keeps shifting? Like you're saying, AI has come and there's just so
Mhm.
much uncertainty. So how do leaders maintain that conviction and that clarity during times like this, which
Yeah.
are unheard of, pretty
Crazy. I
much.
mean,
Yeah.
and it's not just AI, right? It's a whole state of the
Mhm.
world that's a
Mhm.
bit
Mhm.
uncertain.
Mhm.
I don't have the magic wand that's going to tell you this is what you do.
Mhm.
But I think step one is okay, how do you react to the world of uncertainty? What is
Mm.
your go to move? Are you someone who is paralyzed right now of fear of losing your job, losing your, like, because of the state of this change? Are you someone instead who's sprinting towards AI and chasing shiny objects and like blowing up everything around you?
Yes.
Or are you someone who's paralyzed in a different way where you don't have the right answer, so you're so scared of making a wrong one you don't move at all? So I
Mhm.
think again, it's to me, it's how do you become aware of what your go-to move is, and then how do you start getting clear on, okay, what is most important to you despite all the uncertainties, all the craziness that is ahead? What is your truth? Again, what are your values? What do you want to provide? And how do you want to show up in this moment? Because none of us have clarity of what's going to be happening a year or even 2 months or 1 month from now. But what we've got is this day. And how do we just move one foot in front of the other, driven by our unique strengths, our values, and what we're wanting to achieve in this moment?
This is such important work that you're doing. You know, when you
Mm.
talk about culture,
I
you
love
talk
it.
about like, I know, right? This is amazing because leaders have such an impact on their teams, on
It's a
the people that
ripple effect, right?
yes. And so if they haven't done the inner work, if they don't know how they react, or let's say if
Yeah.
they react and are always chasing shiny objects or whatever, that is going to like bleed into the
Onto
culture,
everyone.
onto everyone. Or if they are paralyzed by fear or paralyzed by something, that is going to again bleed into the culture, which can be detrimental, which we know.
Yeah. We've all
So the
felt
work,
that, right?
yes, we have. And so the work that you're doing right now is so important. I know you've been doing it
Mm.
for 7 years, but again, like, I mean, you're literally just getting started. And this is like the perfect time, like, for even more leaders to really hone into their leadership styles and how, they impact the culture, especially now when, organizations, corporate culture
Yeah.
needs as much help as possible to
Yeah,
maintain
we're
during
gonna
these
still
times.
need humans
I
too. And
know.
right,
Exactly.
like I think it's more important than ever of yes, computers can do so
Yes.
much, but how do
Yes.
we connect? How do we lead? How do we inspire? How do we motivate?
Mhm.
And so much of leadership is offering and giving to others, but in order
Mhm.
to do that, we've also got to invest deeply in ourselves so that
Mhm.
we are refueled enough to keep. We got to replenish to keep giving,
Mhm. Mhm.
because you do set the stage for everyone else. And I think it's just such a it's both an honor to lead, but it's also a really big responsibility to lead too.
Yes. It is, but you always have to be rooted in your values and your gifts. I
Yeah.
just love that so much. That's like one of my main takeaways for today. So I know, right? So before we close, we do just want to say thank you. I'm not sure if you're
Oh, my
tuning in
pleasure.
from, of course. So thank you guys. Our audience could be tuning in from Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Who knows, right? And so, before we close, number one, thank you for this
Mm.
conversation. 7 years of building something is huge. It's a major milestone and achievement. So I'm hoping that you have cake, balloons, a celebration,
Will
something.
do.
But I want to close. I want to close with two things. Okay, so I want for the people watching who feel like the pull to build something of their own, but may not
Mm.
be ready yet to trust themselves to begin enough. What would you say to them?
Mm. Start with really defining what what's if you're wanting to go out on your own, what is a life that you're wanting to create for yourself? What really matters? What's most important? And I think you've got to start with the vision of like, and what will life look like when you're achieving that? And then all the other pieces, there's a lot of other pieces that go into that, but all the other pieces start to come into place. But creating the vision for the life that you want and what you want to bring forward, I think is the most important place to start. And then all the other pieces will fall into
Start with the
place.
vision. Exactly. I love that so much. So, like I said, we have people tuning in from different places. So, how can they find you?
Yes. So I have a thriving Substack that I love. It's leadingforward.substack.com. Go there to see a ton of content articles that I write, or amandabreckenridge.com. I'd welcome it. Reach out.
Easy, simple,
Yeah.
simple as possible. Please reach out. Like the world needs you. The world needs more of you. Companies
Oh,
need
thank
more
you.
of you too. And so, being daring is not because daring is not just disruptive, right? Like sometimes daring means staying the course long enough to build something so strong so that endures, right? And so again, to everyone who's joined us today, thank you guys for being here with us to be a part of this amazing conversation during the She Who Dares series for International Women's Month. Because the future rarely belongs to those who wait, it belongs to those who build. So if you found this conversation valuable, please share the replay. Again, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube and Facebook, and share with someone who is building something, or share with a leader who may need to get more in touch with themselves to become a better leader in these evolving times. But that's it. That's all I've got. Thank you so much for joining, Amanda. Thank you guys for
It was
joining,
my
and
pleasure.
we'll
Thank
see you
you.
next week. All right. Thank you.
Bye.